Plan Commission meeting for December 2nd, 2014. Those that have not had the pleasure of the way things work here, first of all, please silence your cell phones if you would, so they don't bother or disrupt our discussions. Second of all, the way things work is city staff presents on an item, then the floor is open just to committee members to ask technical questions. Once we're done with our technical questions, we open it up to the public to speak. If you have something to say, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the minutes. We would appreciate that. And with that, let's call the roll.
David Borsak, Ed Bowen.
Here.
Jeffrey Holmes.
Here.
Thomas Foytak.
Here.
John Hintz.
Here.
Steve Cummings.
Here.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
Gary Gray.
Here.
Donna Laurie. Robert Weigert.
Here.
Carl Nolenberg.
Here.
All right. Approval of the minutes from November 18th, our 12-minute meeting. Is there anything to edit?
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion clearly passes. Let's move on to item number 1, development plan review for a multiple family apartment development on property located in the Marion Road redevelopment area east of 475 Marion Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
This is a planned development request. The location you're probably very familiar with. Here's the Fox River, Marion Road. This is a remainder of 6.4 acres of redevelopment authority-owned property, and the site is sort of situated right in the center. You can see the whole area is Zone C3 planned development. There's a little bit of M2 left out here. Let me see. This is the comprehensive plan. Shows mixed downtown development and a little bit of Parks, Rec, and open space. And here's an aerial of the site. This site itself, and you'll see on the site plan, doesn't quite match this square. It's actually trimmed off. The southeast corner is trimmed off, and you'll see that on the site plan. But it's about 1.2 acres. Again, it's out of this entire leftover 6.4 acres of redevelopment authority land. It would have 240 feet of frontage along Marion Road and about 70 feet of frontage on the river frontage. It's situated between the 60-unit Rivers Senior Apartment Complex, and then this is under construction right now. It's an 80-unit Anthem Apartment Complex on the east. So this would be infill in between there. Let me go to the site plan. So this is kind of a zoomed out site plan. You can see the Rivers apartments here and the Anthem apartments here. Again, this is on about 1.8 acres of property. This one's located on about 2.3 acres of property, which left, about 1.35 acres in the center. So you can kind of see the dashed lines here representing the future property lines. So the site itself is 1.19 acres, 1.2 acres. And it's situated here. There's a leftover piece that runs all the way from Marion down to the Riverwalk, sort of with this southeast corner kind of cut out there. It equates to about 0.27 acres. And what this does leave, and I'll go back a little ways, it leaves this corner parcel, maybe I can zoom out a little bit further, leaves this corner parcel here at about 2.63 acres to be marketed in the future. So I'll go back to the site plan. And again, this is kind of zoomed out a little bit to kind of give you an idea how it sits with the neighboring properties. And this I'll zoom in a little bit closer. Sorry for the odd angle of the plan there. But so what's being proposed is a 5-story, 40-unit senior living apartment building. 4 stories, the upper 4 stories would be housing, with the first floor, which is really what would you call a half floor, would have the below grade parking. They are proposing on the site 56 parking stalls. 32 of those would be in the parking lot here on the north of the building, fronting Marion Road, and there would be an additional 24 interior on that first story. The site itself also contains, once again, the building footprint, a refuse enclosure here on the east side. This would be the entrance to the underground parking. On the south side of the building is a large patio area, a terraced landscape area, ramp for handicap accessibility, stairs leading down to the actually leading down to this park area, which then leads down to the Riverwalk. Also, it would lead over to the redevelopment authority-owned property, which will someday have a walk connection in between Marion and the Riverwalk itself. Parking for the site, as I had mentioned, is 56 stalls which equates to 1.4 stalls per unit. This is going to require a base standard modification to our zoning code standards, which requires 2 stalls per unit, which would be a 80 stall count. So the 56 is quite a bit, or is a little bit less than that at 1.4 stalls per unit. Staff does support the proposed reduction in parking, primarily for 2 reasons. The first is that it is a senior living facility. So historically, senior facilities have less parking demand than regular apartment buildings. Also, 30% of the units in this building are 1-bedroom apartments. So 12 out of the 40 are going to be 1-bedroom units, which also typically have 1 car with them rather than the 2, of a 2 or upper. The site itself, as I had said, is about 51,000 square feet. 23% of that is going to be encompassed by the building footprint, another 38% by paved area, which would leave just about 40% for green space and landscaping. Once again, when we're looking at the area, it's following this line. So it doesn't include this, but there will be much more green space, although some of it may be formal, associated with the site, but not on the site itself. That would be redevelopment authority property developed by the city and the Parks Department. So that is not actually part of this plan development request. It's really just this interior piece. The density for this development at 40 units is a little bit higher than what our code would allow. Code would require 1 unit or allow up to 1 unit per 1,500 square feet. This is 1 unit per 1,294 square feet. So it's a little bit more dense, just nominally more dense than what the code would allow. The density is consistent with the city's goals of kind of activate this part of the downtown, get higher densities, kind of make that central city and riverfront an urban-based population rather than more of a suburban. So staff does not have a problem with the increased density on the site. And actually, we're encouraging those higher densities. So this fits right in with our development goals. Placement of the building, as you can see, is situated for half of the building to take the complete riverfront advantage. The other half would again be facing Marion Road. There are, and you can kind of see it on here, patios and balconies on the south side of the building for all the units. The north side does not have those balconies or patios. That is for 2 reasons. One, obviously, you're taking advantage of the riverfront views, but also the market, a lot of people don't want the balconies or the patios, and then the units on the north side of the building would obviously be more situated for them. You can also see the placement of this sort of large patio and sort of landscape terrace area with the connections to the future park and Riverwalk, are really orienting this building to the river itself, and trying to take advantage of of all the amenities that come along with that. The way the site is laid out, it does require quite a few base standard modifications. The site is very small. The densities again are high. It does not meet the front yard setback. The parking is 20 feet back. The code would require a 25-foot setback. There is an identification sign proposed here. That is situated about 4 feet off of the right-of-way line. Code would require, again, a 25-foot setback. Western setback is at 10 feet. Code would require 16. On the east side setback here, especially around this refuse enclosure, they're down to 5 feet. 16, again, is the required. The refuse enclosure itself is about 2 feet from the lot line. Once again, the site is very tight. It's a small site. They are maximizing green space along the riverfront side. And with the inclusion of this city-owned or redevelopment authority-owned green space, those setbacks are less of a concern to staff because there will be permanent green space in that area adjacent to the neighboring Anthem building and, of course, the Rivers building as well. Access, you can see that the site is primary access is going to be off of Marion Road, a standard Class 2 driveway leading into this parking lot. There's a one-way circulating drop-off area. This is a portico or a canopy. You'd be dropping off underneath that or picking up, parking under there. There's also on-site or off-street access leading to the Rivers property to the west. So this parking lot, you could connect between the two. The advantage to that, it allows interaction between the two sites without entering the street, but it also allows the Rivers development, which right now has 2 driveways, to have a third access point out onto Marion Road. It allows this development, Rivers Phase 2, to also have 3 access points, even though they only have 1 driveway. Obviously, a cross-access agreement is going to be needed between these 2 properties, not only just for this area, but for the entire drive aisle and the access points. Pedestrian access, you can see from the front of the building, goes to the east and to the west and to the east. To the east, it crosses the drive aisle and connects again with this city walk, future city walk. And on the south side of the property, from the patio area, it leads down to the walk in this Park Lake area, and then also connects to the river walk. Staff typically has concerns when developments don't lead a sidewalk right out to the road, but in this case, they are connecting or showing a connection to the future sidewalk that would then again connect the road to the river walk. So that connection is there. Signage for the site, I had mentioned there's a sign placed here. We have not received any details on the signage at all. The placement, again, is within the required setback area. However, you can see a sign here on the Rivers. You can't see the anthem on this site. But you can see it's consistent, very consistent with the setback of the Rivers sign itself. So we don't have a problem with the placement there. As we haven't seen any details for the signage at all, area usually isn't a problem. We allow a lot of sign area, but we are recommending a condition that the sign be a monument-style sign and that it be consistent with what you see at the Rivers development and the Anthem development, which are monument-style signs, 2-pole signs. They're not very tall. I actually have a couple photos. I'll pass it around. That's the photo of the Rivers sign, so something consistent with that. Here it is out on the site, so you can see the proximity to the sidewalk. So that we're going to be recommending as a condition of approval. Landscape plans also have not been submitted, but you can see conceptual landscaping here on the site plan itself. You see some foundation plantings along this terraced area where there is a grade change. Also, biofiltration areas here along Marion Road, which would also be landscaped as well. Obviously, again, this RDA property is not part of the project, but obviously that'll be landscaped as well. Some things that were noticed here is the exclusion of a stall. This length of parking row would require an island in the center because it is over 180 feet long. And also we noticed these 2 striped out areas at the end on the west and the east side of the drop-off, which typically would be required to be landscaped islands as well. The island on this north row felt that it can't be utilized because of the loss of parking stalls. If that island were to go in there, we would reduce that stall count less than the 1.4 already. There is substantial landscaping on the 2 sides and also along that setback area. So we are in support of removing this landscape island. As far as these 2 islands on the sides of the drop-off area, you'll notice there's handicap stalls on both sides of them. Petitioner is utilizing these 2 areas for handicap access. So you exit your van or your car, and it's required to have a striped out area 8 feet wide for handicapped access. Staff had a little bit of concern with that because of this drop-off area. If this is at grade, there's basically no protection from what's supposed to be a handicapped access way and a drive aisle drop-off. So we are supporting the base standard modification to utilize those what would be 2 landscape areas for handicapped access, but with added condition that a curb or other type of physical barrier be installed along there, so vehicles just wouldn't be able to roll over the top of it. Another thing that we wanted to point out, and it's not shown on the plan, obviously this isn't their landscape plan, but that landscaping should be installed along the refuse area here. It is, again, 5 feet from this east lot line, 2 feet from the south lot line. The landscaping should be installed along this area to kind of soften and screen the refuse enclosure. So we're going to be making that a recommendation of our approval as well. Lighting plans also have not yet been generated for the site itself. One thing staff noticed with the extensive amount of on-site outside area and access ways to the park area and the river walk, we do suggest that low-level pedestrian lighting be included in the patio, sidewalk, stairwell, and handicap ramp connection areas. to light that up so people entering and exiting at night can obviously see while they're going down a slope, but also to add the protection of light, in that area. Stormwater detention, as I had mentioned, they're showing a biofiltration here along Marion Road. Formal stormwater management plans have not been submitted with the application, so formal erosion control, drainage, and stormwater management plans would be required to be submitted and approved during the regular site plan review process. Obviously, they haven't gone through the expense to generate all those at this time because of the, if the project obviously isn't approved, they wouldn't need to capture that expense. Go to the next one. This is the elevation. So this is the Marion Road elevation, so the north side of the building. This is the portico or the drive-through area. You can see a lot of different breaks in the roof line. Materials of this building substantially match what you see at the Rivers and at the Anthem. This is the Riverside side, or the south elevation, and you can see here the patios and the balconies for all the units on the side. This would be leading out to the patio area. This is where the drive-in for the underground parking would be situated. The height of the building itself is 56.5 feet tall, which is higher than what our C3 code allows. It's maximum of 45 feet. So that's going to require a base standard modification. The exterior, as I had said, is proposed to complement both the senior living development on the west and also the apartments to the east. The building materials are going to be split face block, brick veneer, fiber cement board and batten panels, fiber cement siding and shakes. The entryways are located both, again, on the north side and the south side, leading to the drop-off area and the patio, respectively. The garage door, as I had said, is located here on the east elevation, leading down into that first floor parking area. We have not received any details for the construction of the refuse enclosure, but staff is recommending as a condition that enclosure match and complement the main building materials as well. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the development plan for the multifamily apartment building with some conditions. Base standard modification to allow the substandard parking count of 1.4 stalls per unit. A base standard modification to the density regulations allowing 34 units per acre rather than 33. Base standard modification to the setbacks, as I had mentioned, that a cross-access easement and agreements provided with the property to the west, that the ground sign be a monument-style sign consistent in design with the other apartment development signs to the west and the east. A base standard modification for the exclusion of the parking row island on the northernmost row of stalls. Base standard modification to eliminate the islands at the ends of those drop-off areas that are going to be used for handicapped access, with the condition that a physical barrier be placed on them. That landscaping is positioned with the intent to soften and screen the refuse enclosure from the public walkway and the park space. Pedestrian lighting is included on the Riverside patio along the walk, stairwell, and ramp connecting to the park and the Riverwalk. A base standard modification to allow the height of the building to be 56 feet 6 inches, and that the materials of the refuse enclosure match and complement the main building materials.
Excellent. Technical questions from the commission. Who wants to begin? Kathy, and then Gary.
It was my impression from, I think, the last time we talked that there were environmental concerns with this site. I mean, serious environmental concerns, so that you couldn't build on it. Those have been resolved?
Well, Alan can probably address that better, but a lot of those are going to be situated. You can see on the site plan here, there's this little line that kind of shows up. That's a lot of your area.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be capped with park space, basically. But Alan, I'll let Alan answer that.
Yes, if you recall, when we were reviewing the Anthem, which is the property to the east, we pushed that property as far to the west as we could until we got to that big plume of solvent is what is really there. To avoid hundreds of thousands of dollars in cleanup costs, we're looking at using the parking lot and the park itself as kind of a cap and leave that material in place. And that kind of lends itself to some of the other plans that the city's had for this property, and that there was a wish that we'd have some public space, a park in this area, and this would serve that purpose. So we maybe get two advantages to have the park there, not only the park space and the open space, but also cover the solvent plume that we'd prefer to keep in place. The other thing that's actually, if you recall, when we were reviewing the Anthem, we told the developer we wanted to leave a corridor for public access between the buildings, and that's been established with this improvement. At the same time, there's also a storm sewer that's being put in to serve Marion Road underneath that corridor. So a couple of things that kind of dictate where things can be built on that site, and that southeast corner is an area that we can put a cap on but not actually build any habitable buildings on. So that was the long story short. Yes, we're avoiding those and keeping them in place to meet the DNR requirements, and we'll be able to close that site once this project and cap is built.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Gary?
Yes, I have about 4 or 5 questions, but I will limit this relating to 3 or 4. First question is, in regards to the density of this location, it was said that the slightly higher density than allowed by code is consistent with the city goal of activating the central city and the riverfront. Is this city goal something that was established by the commission or by the common council, or who set this goal?
Well, that goal is part of our, you could say it's part of our comprehensive plan altogether, was to increase densities downtown and provide housing choices downtown to kind of activate that area. You bring in the residential units, also supports the commercial in the downtown area, so they work hand in hand.
And second question is, idealistically, who would use this public walk? I mean, there's probably very limited parking on Marion Road, and I guess, people are going to be parking north of High Street and walking 2 or 3 blocks to go down to Riverwalk, and I guess I'm just kind of confused on who would use this other than maybe bicyclists.
Well, anybody, if you could see here, anybody in any of this area could easily come down Marion Road, and they could access the Riverwalk through this walk area. There is parking on Marion Road. I don't know what the count is of parking on Marion Road, but the goal really for staff was to keep a connection from the street itself to the Riverwalk without having to go all the way down to Jackson Street or go really far west.
Okay.
So, anybody could use the walk. It'll be a public walk.
Okay. Is there any thought about what's going to happen north of the Marion Road? Because there's a lot of vacant space by the water tower there, and if we're building 5-story buildings along the riverfront, those properties won't have any riverfront views unless they're 6 or 7 stories high. And I was just wondering if there was any kind of hope that that property would be used for something specific. Do you understand my question? Well,
yeah, well, what I can say is that the comprehensive plan recommends that area to the north to be mixed development. So there, without development proposals in place, obviously, housing or some commercial in there would be excellent. There is going to be a water tower rebuilt there, so that'll remain. But, I don't know if...
Which probably would make it difficult to build a apartment building, though, but that's another story. Why is only the underground parking underneath, about half the building and not the whole building?
I believe it's underneath the whole building. It's only a half. It's only a half. It's like a ground floor. It's not fully underground parking, because the lower you get, the more water issues that you have. So that's why it's essentially ground floor space.
The water table is the problem.
Right, and you can see here where the grade starts to change.
Okay. Well, last question for now is there a need to do a traffic study for entrance and exit to Marion Road, by the fact that if this is approved, we're going to have three residential buildings on Marion Road, and there's also a potential of having the southwest corner of Jackson and Marion developed too, with some residential. And I was just wondering if there's a need for a traffic study there, and if there is one, has one been done? And maybe Mr. Goethe will answer that eventually. That's all my questions for now.
What I can say is our transportation director has reviewed all of these plans as they have come through over the years, since I think the last 2 or 3 years these have come through. And the traffic volumes generated by these are not so significant, like a big retail center or something, that he has requested a traffic study for Marion Road. But maybe Steve can answer that better. I don't know. We don't have one. No.
Okay.
Yes, Jeff?
Is the exit to the left-hand side, is that going to be a required exit to be built?
Yes.
Is that why you're having the cross-access? And then the access sidewalk coming down to the Riverwalk on the right-hand side, is that going to be built as part of this development?
That would not be built as part of the development. It'd be a city project.
Do you know when that is scheduled to be done?
I do not.
It's not scheduled until after this project would be built. My
Right.
guess, if this project is built in, say, 2015, 2016, and the storm sewer, I believe, is put in next year, this year, I could see putting this in right when the project is done in, say, about 2016.
Okay, and from the signage placement, I'm assuming that that is not going to interfere with snow removal off of, isn't there an apron out front
There's an
of
apron.
those
Yep.
for the snow to sit, right?
Well, there's an apron in between the sidewalk and the street.
Right.
Yes.
And because of the way, the minimalist nature of the sign, we don't have to worry about like accidents happening where,
Vision triangle you're trying to get at?
pardon me?
You're not getting a vision triangle.
No, it's not a vision issue. I'm just saying because it's so close to Marion Road, we're putting the sign so close, but those signs seem to be like breakaway signs, you know, if it was to be struck.
Yeah,
A minimalist sign, it's not, you know,
I think it's going to be pretty secure, but they may be shoveling around it depending on how far that snow gets thrown.
okay.
But there is the terrace and then the sidewalk, so there's quite a distance before any snow would hit the sign.
Now, because of the cross-access, I'm assuming that I'm a little bit concerned about the parking number of stalls. I mean, even if you do some quick math and say, okay, the 12 apartments have 1 car, the other 2, which are 2-bedroom, could have 2 car, that's 68 stalls. And we're at 50 some odd stalls. Assuming that Marion Road does not allow overnight parking,
Correct.
is the overflow into the next area?
I don't believe so.
There's not a cross-parking agreement at this point.
Why then is staff okay with coming, in order to get down to 50 some odd units, the 28 that are 2-bedroom, half of them would have to have only 1 car.
Right. I think the big point is the senior living and the nature of the senior living buildings.
Your senior living is what, 55 and over?
55 and over, yes. But
Doesn't necessarily mean that
No, it doesn't.
that people only have 1 car. I mean,
Right.
I know a lot of 55-year-olds that both people have cars.
Or more than 2. Yeah, that's
or more than 2,
that's true. But
like me.
I think typically there is less parking demand on a senior living facility than on a straight apartment building.
Well, and I think you look at from we've been putting less emphasis on actually having to have a lot of parking on the sites downtown, especially when you get into the more downtown environments. If you look at what we've done along, say, North Main Street, where we don't require any parking for some of those upper floor units, there just has to be parking available in the area. We put a lot of less emphasis on that because we want to get more people living downtown.
Well, I mean, I
And not everybody should rely on a car.
the thing is, if you want to get more people downtown, then it kind of necessitates that we have more parking downtown. And
Or living.
for living, and not only for that, but because of this particular thing, which we've talked about in prior meetings and sessions, to where we're trying to get more people to come downtown to access the river walk. And we're creating an access point here, not having any actual parking that's allowed for the public except for blocks away
On street.
is problematic. And again, that's probably something for another meeting and not necessarily in this particular one, but we're approving developments along here without that plan.
Well, I guess you start to weigh what do you want to achieve. I mean, you
Right.
could do what you want. You could put a big public parking lot right in here. I mean, you could do something like that, but then we wouldn't get the development. So it's what.
No, I think it's more having a development to where you have sufficient spaces that also provide, some public parking. And
The problem with that is, what's the problem? That you're pushing air around in the balloon because you've got, you also want your development in there too. So the more space that's taken up by parking, less that you're putting into the development itself. Unless if you start adding floors and floors and floors, but as you kind of start going up vertically, then you start creating more demand again for more parking. So it's one of those. It's a good thing to be cognizant of, but it's hard to pinpoint unless you're sitting out in a greenfield area somewhere. It just is.
All right, let's go with Bob and then John.
The underground parking, that's got, what did they say, 26 stalls?
24.
24. You had 56 up above.
56 total. There's 30,
Oh, that's
32.
total.
Yep.
Individually, all these recommendations make sense. And I'm not saying this because I'm complaining about it or anything. I'm just, the fact that we have 9 base standard modifications for one development, are we setting a precedent for the area? And you can say it's not 9, but 3 is still, 1, 2, that counts as 4.
I don't think it's, well, the issue with our zoning code, which we'll be talking about a little bit, and we're updating right now, is our zoning code right now, this is zone C3. C3 right now, and we'll get around to it, C3 has no setbacks, no parking requirements, unless you're an apartment. So it's really, we treat apartments a little bit differently. We impose setbacks on them for some reason, where we don't impose that on a commercial office building or any other type of use downtown. So that's kind of inconsistent with the C3 zoning and the parking. So are we setting a precedent? No, we've done this before because we've had to do this just about every time along the riverfront because we always have to deal with those R5 requirements that we make an R5, an apartment development have to impose on in the C3 area. Really, I think, and we're working that out, are inconsistent with trying to promote development downtown because it really does. It imposes all these other setbacks. So I don't think it's setting a precedent, but I think our zoning ordinance needs to be updated and needs to be brought into.
Which is in the process right now. Right.
Right.
No, I just thought it was worth asking because,
no,
like I said, there's 9 base standard modifications, so.
You're right, and if this was not an apartment building, it would be compliant with all of our zoning requirements, pretty much, except for the height, or even the height would be there. I think even the height would be there.
No, the height one.
The height wouldn't be there? So,
Just chime in on that one. If we didn't have such contamination on the site and poor soils, we could actually go down underground for the underground parking rather than stay at grade, and then we probably would meet the zoning requirement, but it's very costly to dig into that ground.
well, and the water table that creates a whole other issue as well.
Gary?
Yeah, what's the status of long-range planning for the riverfront? We had these visiting sessions, 3 or 4 months ago, and it seems like we're approving these developments without any kind of long-term plan, and we're going to probably be approving this one tonight, and within next year and a half, we're going to have another proposal that we're probably going to approve. And are we running out of options to have any kind of control over our riverfront?
No, I mean, this is consistent with our vision for this. I mean, the development land use is consistent with what we've previously approved with the Marion Road development plans and guidelines. So it's consistent with those plans. We had an idea when we got into this, when we started developing this area back in, the late 90s, I think, when we created the first TIF and redevelopment area, we had a vision for this area to promote development that would include mixed-use buildings, that would include residential along the area. So I think we're being consistent with those previous plans and with those guidelines that we established for those Marion Road guidelines back in, I think it was 05 or so, sometime in there. I think it is consistent with our previous ideas for how we wanted to see development unfold in this area.
Okay. The next question I have is, this building is for senior citizens. The one to the west is for senior citizens. What about the anthem to the east? Is that for senior citizens also?
No.
No?
Market,
Okay. So it's,
market rate.
what does senior citizen housing mean in regards to market rate? I mean, I don't understand the difference between senior housing and market rate.
That I might have to defer to the proposer.
We can ask them.
Okay, good enough. We can do that. Okay, I guess that's it, Mr.
All right, Jeff and then Kathy?
Let's get back to the landscaping plan. This is just a rendering. This isn't necessarily the landscape plan.
Correct,
But I
yeah.
understand them, and where we're saying, okay, yeah, they gotta meet code. Well, guess what? For me, the code ain't good enough. This is a plan development, we can kind of put whatever we want in there. And, from my,
You gotta be careful.
it's overtime. What I'm concerned about is why did we not at least impose something that says, I mean, we looked at a development last time we were here that was 130, 140% of required landscaping, and they did that voluntarily. This is one of our major feature areas along the Riverwalk, and I'm not sure why staff or why we haven't worked with the developer to say, hey, look, we want at least, something more than the minimum standard requirements and the minimum standard type of shrubs and bushes that we allow, which, are typically boring.
I think, you're correct to discuss that in the context of a planned development, but at staff level, without any other sort of guidelines to go off of, what's our starting point? Do we say, you said with Sam's Club, they're at 130%. If we're sitting down with the developer here, what do we say? Do we say we want another additional 50% in this area? And why do so?
On what basis?
Yeah, it becomes on what basis? So now you start to look at this plan that's laid out, and you go, well, we'd like you to put a little bit more emphasis on this area along here. We want you to up it with more deciduous trees, or we want to see a little bit more landscaping in this particular area. I think it's an appropriate conversation to have, but at staff level, it's hard for us to say we want to see 50% more landscaping in this particular area.
Well, and I get that, and that goes back to the comment made earlier. It's tough to approve these projects when we really don't have the necessary plan, and we're waiting for the zoning to come on, but I'm not sure why, if we're going to use an overlay over this area, why we cannot approve an overlay before we get to the zoning ordinances, so that we do have some criteria, and so that we're not stuck with something that isn't exactly what we want from an aesthetic standpoint, and that's not a knock on the developer, because the developer has largely done a nice job on the buildings and stuff that I've seen him do. But in this particular instance, we are silent in terms of what it can do and what we can, all he has to do is submit a plan that meets code, and he's fine. And I'm not sure if code is good enough for this, especially when we're looking at a planned development where we can actually stipulate, and I'm no landscape genius, so I don't know exactly what we could do, but it just bothers me in this particular area that, that's an area that then we develop to something, then it doesn't really meet the aesthetic appeal that makes us differentiating, that makes people want to come down and walk on the Riverwalk. Now, that's a long area. I mean, we got time, and I get that.
Well, yeah, but remember, to start off with, they have to meet the code when it comes to landscape requirements. So the amount of landscaping that has to be there is going to have to be there in terms of shrubs, in terms of trees, and the tree mix. So that at a minimum, that is going to have to be there in the parking lot. And I can tell you, just from when development comes into us, I know that our landscaping requirements, are there areas where we're above a lot of our peers? I think our landscaping requirements, our numbers, that's probably the biggest complaint that we get, is we require too much landscaping. So from a landscaping requirement, I think the numbers are going to be there. If there's more emphasis that you'd like to see in a particular area along the site, heck, a landscape plan is something that's easily drafted and is easily rectified. If the developer has some comfort this project can move forward, we can hold back that landscaping plan. We can bring something back, but we have to give the developer some guidance. Say, hey, we want to see another landscape plan to come back through the Plan Commission, and we want to see it with emphasis on these particular areas. I'm open to that. I think Andy would be open to that.
Well, and I think at a minimum you would want to require that, because again, like I said, it may not be necessarily the number or the position. It may also be the type. You may want certain colors or something to be emphasized.
Shrub types, I can understand.
Yeah, and the shrub types for texture types and that stuff that actually make that area pop. Okay, in terms of what we would do, and so if for the lack of not being able to do that now, to be able to do that and say, hey, look, Andy, when you get further down and get the development, or any developer, when you get further down and get development, we're going to expect something more than just the standard, and we'll work that out with you. I'm fine with that.
No, one problem what you said is none of us, I think, around this table are landscape horticulturists, architects. So that it will become a little bit more subjective. I think. But
don't we?
Even staff
we have a department that does some of that stuff to a certain degree.
We have a department that's very good at making sure you have the right numbers and all that kind of stuff. To get it to pop, now that becomes a little bit more subjective. But I think that's something we can. If that's a general feeling here that you want to see another landscape plan, we can bring that back. I mean, we just condition it. We can recommend approval with condition that the landscape plan be brought in for final approval. That's fine. And then we can run it by and we can have this discussion again. I don't have that issue. It's just, number one is getting that development approved, and that's some certainty for the developer. If you guys are comfortable with that, with the look of that development, we can work all that other stuff out.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And I would propose, and again, in the open discussion, just hear what some of the other councilors have to say on that particular issue.
Kathy?
Quick question.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. I understand the conditions or the need for modifications with the possible exception of the height. Now, did I hear Alan say that the building is that much higher because of the environmental conditions underneath, or because of the need to put more units?
I think we're not digging into the ground because that creates more issues with groundwater and contaminated soil and poor soils. The more you dig down, the more you'll have to handle that material and potentially have to landfill it, which drives up the cost. So if you can keep out of the water table and out of the problem soils, you're automatically going to be taller. That's what I was trying to say. You could try to squash this building down and get under the cap, but that's going to drive up the development.
That's why the building is 10 feet higher than code?
I think that's the residential end of it, right? David, there's no is there restriction? There wasn't a restriction on commercial, right?
I believe it's 45 feet.
That just doesn't make sense in a downtown area. See, that's where some of our code doesn't. It doesn't make sense in a downtown, central city area that you have some of these height limits. Because when the 100 block came through, that's 7 stories. 7 stories wouldn't.
These other, is the Rivers, the one you're looking at
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
is that one the same height?
I believe
or-
that one's 53 and a half
That's
feet.
53?
So it's a little
All right,
bit
so it's
shorter,
already
but
better.
it's
If you look at this one,
consistent.
Kathy, you can see the, you can see that, you can see the garage.
All right.
You can see the.
Then that's the
underground
end of my
parking.
short question.
And on this one, it's probably going to be just a little bit higher out of the ground. That's where you're getting that additional 3 feet.
I don't know if you
because
can
it's
see
sort
it
of
on the
worse.
elevations.
We have any more technical questions?
Yeah, we can see it
We've
here.
set a record, I believe.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay, no,
It's a complicated project.
let's hope this answers a lot of questions that would happen after the public discussions. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item?
I'm available for questions, I guess.
Why don't you step up? I think there are some, Mr.
Better be available.
Do we have questions for the petitioner that we haven't already asked? Kathy and then Jeff.
Gary had asked the income limit question. I was going to ask that also.
Yep, no problem. 2 things. One is, when we were saying market rate and 55 and older, those have nothing to do with each other. Basically, when you do 55 and older, it's restricted to 55 and older, and then the property, the Anthem, the property to the east is any age group. So there's no, the income restrictions are a relevant part of it. What we're doing, though, on the senior is doing income restrictions, 60% of the county median income in order to live there. That does not apply to the apartments to the east, the Anthem. You can make $1 million a year and live there. So, but it sounds like there's a cross confusion between market rate and 55. It's basically, we did market rate apartments next door, and we're doing senior on this project on Rivers 1, but with the senior projects, we're doing them income restricted.
But you could,
There's
for
nothing to
some
the fact that they're
units,
senior.
where somebody that owns $1 million, has $1 million, could live in this new building, or no?
They could live in this new building as long as their investments aren't creating more income than, say, on an average, say, $30-some thousand a year. So, it is more for, if you're on a pension, a small pension, your assets are relevant. It's just basically what is your income. And it helps. The only way we can afford to build this type of project with this few of units is by doing the income restricted. We sell tax credits in order to make that happen.
And let's add one thing to that, is that this is not a restriction in perpetuity. This is a restriction for a minimum of, 10, 15 years?
We're audited for 15 years.
15 years.
By WIDA.
So for 15 years, it can transition out to market rate. So
The restriction's supposed to be on there for 30 years.
30 years, okay.
There's a payback where once you sell the tax credits, there's no penalty for not following the restriction, basically. So if you don't follow those restrictions for 15 years, the IRS can come back and say your tax credits weren't used properly, and then they don't count. So basically,
What would be the case where you would want to do that? That would be, I would assume that if the market became so strong, like we're downtown Chicago, and you can command those rents, we could do something, it'd be
Maybe worth it to you,
It'd
too.
Yeah, I
be
mean,
easy to do that, but
it's a little bit of the thing that's, the income restrictions are more meant for a bigger market than Oshkosh. Because even in Milwaukee, you can charge $2,000 a month or $1,800 a month or $1,500 a month for an apartment. Here in Oshkosh, you can't. The difference between a market rate apartment and an income restricted apartment for the rent per month is very similar.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
our markets are pretty close. And
Are pretty
that's-
close.
It just shows the strength or lack thereof in some of our rental market, and that's why, that's why you got to do some of these tax credit projects, and that's why it's not uncommon. You see this going on in Green Bay, you see this going on in Appleton. They are building a lot of these new housing projects are, a lot of them are senior related because you can get money for cheaper, then you can reevaluate that and.
Okay.
Jeff?
This is no different than, the income restriction is no different than the apartment to the west, right?
Correct, yep,
It's basically on the same premise.
exactly.
This is like phase 2.
Yep,
All right.
yep.
Now, getting back to my point on the landscaping, do you have any issues per se about kind of having to come back with a landscaping plan?
Not at all.
Or, working with somebody to kind of put something that's obviously more aesthetically appealing because of the Riverwalk area here? I mean, I don't know if I would have cared if I'm out, a mile out on Main Street.
I would have no problem coming back with a landscape plan, and I agree that Oshkosh is a little short on landscaping. David gave me this lecture once. He doesn't admit to remembering doing it, but he sat me down and lectured me on all my landscaping, and I've been trying to do a better job in going above the call of what's in the code. But the other thought on that is, a lot of what I do is I plagiarize stuff in my buildings, and when you're looking at landscape plans and you're increasing them, you can go into another community like a Brookfield or something like that where they have pretty high intense landscape plans and possibly just pull pages out of their book and
Yeah, I mean,
Sort of
I'm not
ours.
talking about getting terribly, but I mean, again, when you're looking at trying to make this an attraction area for people to come to, there's got to be some reason to have the attractions for people to come to. And it can't be just, oh, yeah, okay, we got some green bushes and we got some green trees.
Yep.
There has to be something that sets it off, and this is part of that whole corridor that people will walk up and down to appreciate. So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, we have that lack, to Darren's point earlier, we have that lack of a plan
Yep.
to be able to do that.
Yep. No, I agree.
All right, I mean-
I'm 100% open to coming back with a landscape plan in the future.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioner? No shot. All right, thank you, Mr. Duffy, very much. Looks like Alan's got something for us, which I'm sure we'll appreciate.
Yeah, since I work for the RDA as well, it would make sense for the RDA to start working on some landscape plans for the park as well, just so you could see how everything would kind of come together.
Thank you.
And make it kind of a destination, less boring, at least on the north side of the river.
Thank you very much. Anyone
would
else?
help.
Anyone else here in the audience to speak to this item today? Seeing none, the public commentary is closed. We're back to the commission.
Make a motion that we approve this with the addition of the coming back with a landscape plan. Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Kathy?
I just want to comment that I like landscaping very much, but I don't like micromanaging. And we talk a lot about landscaping, but I don't know if we've ever asked a developer to come back with a special landscape plan.
Been a lot of years.
We used to do that more
I
often.
mean, I know we can do it in PDs, but I don't want to pick on this developer in this instance.
This is what you could be doing with the condition, is just coming back for review, not approval, but, review for some comments, for some suggestions. We could handle
Comments
it.
and suggestions.
We could
yeah,
handle,
but not
we could
approval.
handle it
Okay.
like that. So before we move forward with an actual approval of the landscape plan, we'll bring it back here for review, and that way we'll take your comments, and then
Try to build them into the...
Yep, we still have
That sounds
the
fair.
Department of Community Development, we still final approval landscape plan. We could handle it that way.
Okay,
Can we workshop that?
there we go.
I mean, not do that as an agenda item on a
Yeah.
regular meeting? I don't like the idea of approving a landscape plan
we can do
independent
something like
of
that.
another
Yeah, I don't
project, but I'm fine with the idea of giving some feedback to you guys who,
work
I think to some degree, and you're not trying to do this, but to some degree, we're sort of undermining your discretion that you guys have always shown, and I don't think we've ever given you an approval and said, subject to the approval of the Department of Community Development, and then I've looked at the project down the road and said, boy, they really dropped the ball on that landscape approval. You guys have always done a really good job with that, so I don't like the idea of undermining you guys. So if you could bring it back as a workshop item, we could give you some thoughts, comments, whatever, I'd be fine with that, but I don't like the idea of putting it as an agenda item that the PC is going to approve.
Well, like I said, we can bring it back for review, and whether that's as a workshop or as just an item for review, not approval, but for review, before we approve it. I think we can do something like that.
It's fine.
Steve and then Jeff.
I'm not looking for you to micromanage it either, so.
There's all different types of
Plus, I
landscape.
can skip a workshop.
This is Wisconsin, so I think we have to be compatible with our weather. What I'd like to suggest is that park area that Alan, the RDA, work with Andy and sort of kind of come up with a theme for it.
Coherent.
You want all pine trees and a block of views like 10 years, or do you want both? I mean, you guys figure it out. I mean, we all have our taste in landscaping and flowers and plants. These people who are experts put it together.
Jeff?
Actually, I did mean to undermine what they're doing, but
I was trying to be nice.
Don't even bother.
I guess, yeah, I agree with Kathy as far as micromanaging. I really do get that. But the only reason I'm making a point here is because of where it is and because at the moment of that lack of vision that somebody mentioned earlier as far as the development along that whole process, which we haven't totally vetted yet. And, it's coming as part of the zoning and where we'll have some say in terms of maybe some of the standards and stuff that we talked about that we want along that river front, the way we want things to look or how we want, buildings to look or materials to be or however. This is our chance to make that. So that's where I'm kind of getting at. I'm not against this particular development. I'm just saying we put this in and then all of a sudden we change the way we have the vision, then we kind of got something that doesn't fit. And so I'm saying is, hey, yes, we're putting more of the onus on this particular developer, which it wasn't my intent. The only thing is, I know the developer and what he's done, he's open to that because, he's a responsible developer, and it gives us a chance to kind of say, hey, look, this is the kind of things we want along here, and that's kind of only the point I'm trying to make. I don't necessarily disagree with Ed as far as maybe we do a workshop and we can kind of discuss once, and the other comment as far as working with the the redevelopment authority to kind of say, okay, how do we integrate these together so it looks harmonious and we don't look like we have two different things. That makes sense, and to do that in a workshop and say, okay, yeah, what is it that we want? Do we want all green or we want to have some different colors, knowing that, yeah, this is Wisconsin and we have to have right type of plan. So
Okay.
One last comment on the
Steve.
landscaping. I've been in different communities where they've done extensive landscaping on, say, riverfront, one of which is Augusta, Georgia. And they spent millions of dollars. They had to go back and take it out.
As it grows.
All sorts of problems.
Yes.
They never done it, but they had to take it
Oh,
out
that would have to-
because it was not properly thought through. So.
John.
Yeah, just want to piggyback a little bit on what Jeff was saying. The last workshop we had with this developer was for the Fair Acres development. He took everything that we talked about in that workshop and ran with it. I mean, we ended up with a really nice landscape plan out there. It's very secluded from everything else for the area that he had to work with. So, I mean, I'm also on board with the workshop idea because of the fact that I just know that the Dumkies have worked with us before on that, and I know that they have open ears on it. So,
Kathy and then Gary.
I really appreciate the developers' willingness to invest in our Riverwalk. I really do. But I just have to say that I came in frustrated that we're approving yet another building without a plan, without an overall plan. The Plan Commission has wanted a river overlay, something to give us guidance on what we want to have. And here we've got three big buildings right next to each other. Maybe that's good. In this case, I'm not complaining about this particular one. I'm going to vote for it, but I don't want to vote on another one until we have a plan. Can we do that?
Well, we've had a plan.
Can we do
I
that?
keep saying this. We have a plan for this area. It's called the Marion Road Plan. I mean, the guidelines, everything that we've done.
Well, then the next time, especially if it's in another location, can we
I
get a
understand
bigger
that.
picture?
I can understand that. But going forward on
Visioning
these
thing,
plans,
the bigger
we
picture.
we didn't start developing this area, acquiring all the land under the TIF and going out with the RFPs and all that without having a plan for the area. You guys were involved with that. A lot of people who were on this plan commission, they weren't around at the time. You were in the plan commission at the time. David was on the plan. We're talking 05, so we're still being consistent with those plans. Just that we haven't. I don't think we've done a refresher on what was in those plans, and now we're getting a lot of activity in this area. So I should at least get you some of that stuff, and because we're going to be seeing more development plans coming in across the street, and they should be reviewed to those Marion Road design guidelines that are out there. So those are out there. You're right, but as we transition to other undeveloped areas where we don't have that riverfront overlay in place, where we don't have other things in place, yeah, we should be talking more about that. And we're moving when we get to this at the end, that riverfront visioning session. We're going to have a presentation of that at the next meeting, but I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So.
Gary and then Jeff.
Okay, yeah, I agree with Kathy in regard to river overlay. Question I have is, what exactly is the motion? Is the discussion of the landscaping going to be part of the regular meeting, or is it going to be a workshop? Because I think the original motion it's going to be part of the meeting, and I just want clarification.
Different things. I think it's asking for a workshop globally, or are you asking for a workshop about this particular?
Not asking for a workshop.
Or you're begging?
I don't want a workshop. It's already
Suggesting. You suggested a global.
That would be a more
whereas this would be,
appropriate way to handle
we're asking that this be this we're asking, in addition to that this.
It's not an action-
I don't know if
it's
there's
not
an
an
actual
action
motion.
item.
Okay.
Bob,
Yeah, there was.
you made the motion, what do you want?
Bob said
Okay.
to include that he come back with the,
Right.
Well, theoretically, you can't
Have
make the
Deb read it
motion.
back.
You have to amend the motion then, because you can't unilaterally make a change to motion after you gave it to the commission, because it's the commission's motions. But anyhow, the second question I have
Yeah.
is, what exactly are we supposed to do at this landscaping? Are we going to sit around and have
It's
to 10 people
it's not
with their opinions?
it's not been formed yet. It's just a
that's
suggestion.
not
We're not there yet. It's not
getting
appropriate to
excited
talk
about
about it because there's no plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to amend that motion to have the landscaping plans brought back as a workshop session.
Is your second go? Okay, your second's okay with that.
I'll call a question.
Call the amendment. Question to amendment, please.
Why?
I think if you amended his own.
he already called.
I'll call for a question.
He amended his own.
I amended it already.
And he approves.
Without a vote?
No, we're taking the vote now.
We can vote on
for
this.
the vote.
Call roll.
Hens,
Aye.
Cummings. Prop,
Aye?
Gray,
No.
Weigert,
Aye.
Mullenberger.
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Tomes,
Aye.
Aye.
motion carried 8-1.
Moving on to item number 2, storm sewer easement acquisition located at 1382 and 1390 Maricopa Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a storm sewer easement acquisition request. The City of Oshkosh Department of Public Works is requesting a 40-foot wide by approximately 200 feet deep storm sewer easement to the City of Oshkosh to install a 5-foot by 8-foot storm sewer through two subject properties, which would connect from the proposed stormwater detention basin to the north to the storm water facilities in Maricopa Road. And what I'm going to do is kind of see if we have another picture here. We don't. This is sort of the site. These two sites, this is 1382 Maricopa. It consists of two 4-unit dwellings with associated parking area. And then to the east of that is this development. It kind of jogs around this way. The yellow lines are the property lines. The requested acquisition for easement area is outlined in blue. The 1390 Maricopa contains a single 16-unit apartment building here. So this must be a property line as well. The properties abut undeveloped lands to the north. The city had acquired them in 2010 or 2011 for the future development of the stormwater detention basin in that area. The surrounding area in general consists of a mix of multifamily uses along Maricopa, two-family uses along the south side of Maricopa, light industrial on Washburn, which you can kind of see here to the far east. So again, in late 2010, Plan Commission and Council approved the relocation order to allow Public Works to acquire property for the proposed stormwater detention basin near the intersection of 9th, and this is kind of a little better, 9th and Washburn. So you can kind of see this is the proposed stormwater detention basin within this area. Design work is underway. During that design work, it was determined that an existing storm sewer easement located at the south end of the acquired property, is not sufficient. and it's not adequate to allow the construction of larger storm sewer pipe. So a new location was kind of sought out, and a larger easement was looked at, and what was basically selected as the most viable spot was right here in between these two properties. I'm going to see if there's another, well, and you can kind of see it here, in between 1382 and 1390. I'm going to go back to that aerial photo because it's a little bit better here. So kind of in between the two properties. It'd be 40 feet wide easement, would be located, the staff report is inaccurate, is not centered on the common lot line, it's kind of offset. It's a 25-foot easement on the east on 1390 and a 15-foot easement on 1382. But it's in between those two properties, basically straddling the lot line. And during construction of the storm sewer, portions of the driveways and parking areas in both, you can see the driveway leads up this area to this parking lot, and you have a driveway and a little bit of parking that would be impacted by that easement area. Those are going to need to be removed for the installation of the storm sewer, but once that construction's complete, any pavement that was removed would be replaced by the city in its exact location. Public Works has been in contact with the property owners for the two properties of the easement acquisition. They're going to be working with the city attorney to have easement documents signed and recorded at Winnebago County Register of Deeds. So basically, what we're looking at here is a 40-foot easement area to get a outfall pipe out of that detention basin into Maricopa. We are supporting the easement request, or the acquisition of the easement request. We don't feel it have a negative impact on any of the surrounding properties or the subject properties, and it is definitely needed to help alleviate stormwater flooding in the area.
Great, thank you. Technical questions, Jeff?
Is this to allow water to run into the storm or out of?
Steve can
When
answer.
it
I believe it's
overflows.
out, but maybe I'm wrong.
This is in. This will be the main inlet.
Never mind.
pipe.
Oh, this is
It
the
is
main, this is the main in?
Yes.
And is that a detention pond, is that a dry detention pond or is it a wet?
It will be wet. It will have wet components.
Okay.
Other technical questions? Seeing none? Anyone here to speak to this item? There is nobody here to speak to this item. Back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Oh, pardon me, call the roll. Getting ahead of myself.
Kins,
Aye.
Cummings,
You're going to make a note.
Crop,
Aye?
Gray,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Mullenberger,
Aye.
Owen,
Aye.
Helm,
Aye.
Bozak.
Aye.
Carried 9-0.
Got a couple of announcements from the big fella here.
Let me make a couple of, yes, please, thank you. Riverfront Visioning, so mark your calendars for the December 16th meeting, which is our next Plan Commission meeting. East Central's going to come down and do a presentation on the Riverfront Vision, on the plan, and we're hoping, it's in draft form right now, we've been working with East Central to get it finalized, we're hoping to get the plan done ahead of that, so during the presentation, you'll have had that plan, so.
Is this the overlay?
No, this is those riverfront sessionings that we've done. The overlay is actually included, announcement number 2, kind of, is our zoning ordinance update, where we're getting ready, I think we've got 4 chapters done, and we're getting ready to we're finalizing that with a consultant, and we're going to ship those out to the stakeholder group, hopefully within a week or so, right?
Yes.
So we'll have a meeting coming up on that. And that's been, I mean, that's a pretty thick document right now with only half the zoning ordinance.
Well, it's about a third of the zoning ordinance, so we're about 200 pages.
Is that coming to us too? Or just the stakeholders?
Well, stakeholders and you, I mean.
Yeah, it goes to the stakeholders first. There are a bunch of items in there that we need judgment calls on that we're not sure which way to go. We let stakeholders go with that. And then once those are kind of finalized, we would bring those to the Plan Commission as well probably as a workshop item. And then obviously we'd work on the next chapters after that and bring those through. Same process until we got a full document.
What's on the 16th then?
I don't, there might be
It's the 16th is the Riverfront Visioning Report. There were 3, I don't know if you remember, there were 3 big visioning sessions that we had, actually along the riverfront at the south side in one location and 2 on the north. People came, the consultants had tables set up to try to solicit your wants and desires, what's bad, what's good with the riverfront, and they're consolidating all of those
We're just going
comments.
to present those findings in the report, and a lot of that will be used, because as we're going through the zoning ordinance update process, we'll use some of those recommendations in it. So it's nothing, I don't think it's anything that's all that earth-shattering. It just, I think it reinforces a lot of our previous thoughts for development along the road.
Got a quick question for Darren. What's the possibility of having a joint meeting with the common council?
We'd have to ask if the council can make.
As a possibility, I'm not.
No, and we like to have those things. I mean, we'll certainly invite them. I mean, they'll be invited, potentially the RDA, but we always like to use the plan commission as the formal sounding board, because this is the planning, this is the official planning function.
Okay.
So we'll invite the other two.
Understandable.
We'll invite the other two.
Okay.
They'll be welcome.
The last meeting for the council of the year is December 9th.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Got it right that time, Tom.
All right.